Rip City Mornings.
You know, we've been talking a ton on the big show about influential players, where Steph Curry may not be one of the greatest players. I mean, he's an unbelievable player, and we can dive into that a little bit more, where he ranks in the top 10. But in terms of influence on a sport, he is one of the all-time greats. Now, our next guest sat in the same radio studio as me for a chunk of time. Not long enough, by the way. The people have said we needed much more as my co-host. And at that time, nicknamed me Hot Take Jake. And I have seen some of his Twitter activity. And I'm glad that I maybe had a bit of hot take influence on our next guest. He's the host of the Wake Up and Win podcast. He is the former co-host of Justin and Devon. Is Devon Pouncey back on the big show? Good morning, Pounce. How are you?
Oh, man, I'm always home when I'm with you, man. I'm glad to be back on the big show. Glad to be back.
So I want to get your thoughts on the basketball playoffs that are going on, and maybe even dive into this Steph Curry kind of all-time great discussion. But I want to get your thoughts on what I'm talking about throughout the day, which is the difference between all-time great basketball player and all-time influence. I mentioned that for me, the top two athletes of all time are Michael Jordan and Tiger Woods in terms of their influence on the sport, on the culture, the way that we watched sports, the way Tiger Woods won the Masters and everybody just decided they wanted to play golf. It wasn't as an exclusive sport anymore. I think for this younger generation, I think Steph Curry might be one of those guys where, you know, back in 2014, every kid in elementary school, AAU, middle school, high school, just probably decided, nope, I want to be like Steph Curry and I want to shoot threes. I think he's one of, even more than LeBron, more influential than LeBron James. Where are you on that?
I think he's more influential than LeBron James, maybe when it comes to the sport of basketball and the way that it's played. I think beyond basketball, though, LeBron James is still more influential in terms of the things that he does off the court in tandem with what LeBron James has obviously been able to do on the court. But the thing about Steph Curry in particular is, like, I think the common person can just relate to Steph Curry. Not often are you going to have a 6'9" machine like LeBron James who can move the way that he can, with the agility that he has, the athleticism that he has. But a guy like Curry, who's been known for most of his career as like this 6'2" scrawny guy who's like basically taken over the game of basketball, I think a lot more common people can relate to him and feel like they have a chance to reach the type of greatness that he's been able to reach just based on like physical stature and probably being able to look him eye to eye if they've seen him in person. So I also would say, to take it a step further, I think Steph Curry, because sports is still indeed entertainment, I think Steph Curry has probably become the best entertainer in sports during this era today. I mean, I'm talking about as soon as he walks through a gym, I'm talking about during warm-ups, you can't take your eye off the guy. He's shooting three-pointers from the bleachers. He's just doing incredible trickery stuff, and then it translates onto the floor, and yet he still is able to win doing stuff that we were once told that you shouldn't do, or that isn't necessarily the most efficient way to win basketball games. Like, he's absolutely shattered the notion of living and dying by the three-pointer. He's lived by it, and it's worked. You know, obviously he's lost some championships here and there, but if you just look at the overall success that he's had, he's absolutely revolutionized the game with his ability to shoot the three-point shot primarily, but he's more than that too. He's more than just the greatest shooter of all time if we start to break down his game as a whole.
That is such a fascinating take. This is why we bring you on the show, Pounce, because you bring great stuff.
I'm here, baby. I'm here to talk about it. I'm here to talk about it.
And like you said it, you said most entertaining player in the league from an entertainment standpoint. It like just eyeballs on the guy, and so you know how my brain works. I'm like, all right, I gotta think this one through, and I don't know if there's even a close second. Who's a close second? Like I love Giannis, but his style of game kind of bully ball. And unfortunately, he got hurt and then has also dealt with some other stuff. But I think the closest is Ja. Would you say there? In terms of entertainment value I like watching this guy. I would say Ja Morant, maybe the closest one.
I would say Ja Morant is the closest one,
Yeah.
but I don't think it's even close, and here's why. Ja Morant is entertaining when he has the ball in his hands. Steph Curry, you have your eyes glued on him when he's off the ball as well. In fact, to take it a step further, he might just be the greatest entertainer right now today, period. Just like across the landscape of entertainment in the United States of America, there may not be a guy more entertaining than Steph Curry today. I'm not saying that there hasn't been people in the past or that he's the greatest entertainer of all time, but I'm saying as a guy who's actively in entertainment right now today, whether it be sports, whether it be music, whether it be acting, whatever you call entertainment, Steph Curry is so far and beyond everybody else in the game of basketball that we have to put him in more of a macro conversation when it comes to entertainment as arguably the best entertainer out right now. Like, the dude is just incredible to watch. And again, most people that are entertaining in the sport of basketball are entertaining when they have the ball in their hands. He's entertaining off the ball. Just watching how he moves around. Like, you can kind of like watch and dissect his every step and his every move and just be entertained by the dude because he's so freaking good at what he does.
It's been a while since Timberlake has done anything. Because I'm like, that's, you want to like that. He held the title belt for a while, Justin Timberlake.
Yeah.
In terms of like maybe greatest entertainer of all time. Problem is then we start getting into music pounds, and then I can't not discuss that and not sound like an old man.
Well, I mean, you know,
Because somebody's going to say Drake or something, and I'll be like, I don't get it. It's not.
I don't think Drake is. I think Timberlake was in that conversation for a while, but he's kind of out of his prime, if you will. That doesn't mean he can't drop a hit tomorrow.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I think Usher is one of those people that was in that conversation. I think, you know, Chris Brown might have been one of those people that was in that conversation. Obviously, if you take it way back, Michael Jackson. If we get into acting, I think Denzel Washington was one of those people in that conversation. But again, these are people that aren't like as relevant as far as their prime is concerned right now today, where Steph Curry still seems to be in his prime right now today. And I mean, heck, he's more entertaining than Michael B. Jordan, for crying out loud. I just watched the Creed 3 movie, and I wasn't that impressed by it.
Creed 3 is no good.
Jordan is probably the hottest the hottest actor, at least in the game right now. So I would rather watch a Steph Curry basketball game more than I would rather watch Creed 3. So, hey, man, talk to me, Justin.
Well, all right. So this is fascinating stuff. It's not where I expect this conversation to go, but you know what? When it's gold, Pounce, you go with it. You know this. We learned this when we worked together.
Do it.
So, all right. So I'm going to throw out some entertainers. Let's see where, like, all right. I don't know if you are in this world. I know about this world because of my wife and my wife's friends.
Okay.
But Taylor Swift right now is kind of taking over the world. All right.
Yes.
People are
in that
selling their cars for Taylor Swift tickets right now.
Yes, they are.
She nearly broke Ticketmaster. So I would throw Taylor Swift in there. Now, I haven't seen it. I'm going to be in Vegas. I don't know if I'm going to make it, but Usher. Did we talk?
Usher's my guy.
Usher. Everything
Usher's
I've heard
my guy.
about the Usher, like he was on The Voice, right? He's taken over Vegas. Spans generations, right? Because I know all about You Make Me Wanna. Like, that's me. That's my Usher. Yeah. You're probably Confessions Usher.
I'm Confessions Usher. Yes. Yes, I am.
So I think I would throw those two in there. But yeah, it's and I'm sure there's some TikToker out there that all the kids will be like, no, this person's fan. Like, I don't know who that is.
Yeah, I agree. But I would agree with those two. I've seen what Taylor Swift has been able to do. Obviously, I DJ as well, so I know enough to know that she is one of the biggest entertainers in all of entertainment right now. Usher, I think, as well. I think the problem with Usher is he's probably performing his tail off out in Vegas at the residency, and I think he's setting himself up for a prime situation to continue to just dominate Vegas. And then Super Bowl Sunday next year, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Usher perform at the Super Bowl halftime show because it'll be in Vegas next year. So think about that as well. But Usher's still performing the old hits. Curry is coming out, and he's still playing as the most electrifying player in the game today. Again, that's no knock to Usher, but I don't think Usher is particularly in his prime today. I think he's just leveled up into a different stratosphere, in this legendary stratosphere, but he's still performing the old hits. Steph Curry is still out here and performing and producing at maybe the level I think this is probably the best version of Steph Curry we've ever seen. I think he's stronger now. I think he's more mature now. He's not as careless with the basketball anymore, yet he can still knock down three-pointers from half court, and he can still score at the ability that he was able to when he was having single-season three-point records and when he won back-to-back MVPs and when his team was winning, championships early on, going 73-9, so on and so forth. So I like Taylor Swift and Usher in the conversation. I just think Usher is performing older hits right now, and he doesn't have as many new hits. Steph is a hit every time we watch him go on the floor, still to this day, and what he does actively.
Devon Pouncey from the Wake Up and Win podcast joining us here on 620 Rip City Radio talking hoops. But here's what's fascinating, Pounce, is that all of this talk that we are having right now, if the Warriors lose to the Lakers, it goes away, which is why I love sports, right? Pounds, it was a couple weeks ago. Who's the best player in the world? Probably Giannis. Giannis loses to Jimmy Butler in the Heat. All of a sudden, no, Embiid's the best player. Well, if they lose, well, then no, it's Jokic is the best player. It is a what have you done for me lately? So let's talk about this. Game 1 coming up tonight. Lakers, Warriors. Again, it's different team, but it is what, like part 7 in the postseason, which I always love that matchup. But from a hoops perspective, because you know this. I don't know basketball. I like threes and I like dunks. You played the game. You understand the game. You know more than anybody that matchups matter than power, as we've seen in a couple of these series. When you look at this matchup between the two, who do you like in this series from a basketball perspective?
From a basketball perspective, I think that I like the Warriors. And I think the Warriors, it was something they did last year that I think is going to be able to translate into a series like this against the Lakers. And I think it was when the Warriors were able to defeat the Boston Celtics in the NBA Finals last year. A lot of people actually picked the Celtics to win that series because the Celtics had the length, they had the size, they had the speed. Obviously, they even had a little bit more youth in certain ways, at least when it comes to who the star players are on their team, than the Lakers have. But folks is like, they can switch everything. They can do this. They can do this. But somebody that's played basketball all of my life, and a good portion of my life, I should say, and been around the game all of my life, there's still nothing to me that beats spacing. Yeah. And especially when it comes to having a great defense or having a lot of guys who can switch on everything or guard multiple positions, so on and so forth. And the reality is, Stephen Curry, the gravity that comes with Stephen Curry, you got to pick the guy up at half court. Yeah, you might have Anthony Davis in the paint who is able to wait for somebody like a Ja Morant and make things harder for Ja to be able to finish at the rim. But if you're setting the screen at damn near the logo for Stephen Curry on a high pick and roll action, and he's got all of that room to operate, and he can just stop and pop at the top of the key, or even if he wants to take a step or two in and put up a floater, like Anthony Davis is going to have to come out and play against Stephen Curry. He's not going to be able to just sag and protect and control the paint, because not only is there Steph Curry, there's obviously multiple other shooters out there as well. The Klay Thompsons, the Jordan Pooles, Wiggins, guys can knock down shots. So I think just with the spacing that the Warriors play with, to me, it's really, really hard to beat in a 7-game series. Yeah, I can see a game or two where the size of the Lakers is just too much for the Warriors, especially if they're just not hitting shots. But I don't expect the Warriors to not hit shots over a span of 7 games. And I expect the Lakers to try to wear down covering so much ground against the Warriors, who also know how to defend as well. I mean, Wiggins obviously is a great defender. Draymond Green, I think, although there's nobody who can stop Anthony Davis because he's that good of a player, there's probably nobody in the league that's going to make Anthony Davis work harder than Draymond Green defensively. You got the GP2s of the world. Steph has improved on that side of the ball over the last few years as well. So for me, I just think spacing and gravity becomes too much over a span of 7 games, which is why the Warriors haven't lost a Western Conference series since 2013-14 season anyway. And I think we'll see more of that here in this series.
Devon Pouncey, Wake Up and Win podcast, joining us here on 620 Rip City Radio. You mentioned spacing and what Jokic is able to do with Denver, just right there in the middle of the floor. Phoenix has got absolutely no answer, and it's interesting because, and I'm guilty of this as well, Pounds. We love drama in the NBA, right? We want stuff to talk about. Dylan Brooks and LeBron James, Jimmy Butler taking down Giannis, right? We want the drama in the NBA, but the team that has been maybe the most drama-free has been the Denver Nuggets. They have the best record in the Western Conference. They're the number 1 seed. One overtime hiccup to the Timberwolves. Other than that, they have been an absolute wagon in the postseason and relatively drama-free. And you just wonder if, like, are we just going to keep talking about everybody else and all of a sudden take a look around and go like, oh, yeah, the Denver Nuggets are probably on their way to winning a championship right now.
Yeah, no, Denver's playing great, man. Joker obviously has played like the best player in the league this year, and maybe the last few years if you consider the MVPs and what he's been able to do. This Denver team is healthy for the first time in the postseason in a while, probably since the bubble, where they had a really good run, you know what I'm saying? And so Denver is definitely a force to be reckoned with. I don't see a world where the Phoenix comes back from down 0-2 like maybe the Warriors were able to do against the Kings. Yeah, I know Phoenix has Kevin Durant. They obviously have Devin Booker, but I think my problem with Phoenix is Kevin Durant, to this point, to date, has been the second best player on that team. And the playoffs is still about having star power, and the playoffs is still about having the best player on the floor as often as you can. We saw what Steph was able to do in Game 7. But Kevin Durant, and that's no knock against Devin Booker, who I think has been the best player on this team, but Devin Booker ain't better than Joker. So as long as Devin Booker is your best player and Joker is the opposing team's best player, I'm putting my money on Joker and his team, especially being that they're fully healthy. Now, Kevin Durant, I think, has the potential to be better than Joker and has had points in his career where he has been better than Joker. But they need that Kevin Durant right now in order to win this series. And until he comes out and becomes that player and basically becomes the number 1 option on this team and obviously scores it at an efficient level that he's been able to do for majority of his career, we've known him to be a 50, 40, 90 guy. Like, he has to do that right now or they'll be going in 5.
Well, and that's the one thing I was going to ask you. And I remember a couple of years ago when finally Kevin Durant with the whole thing with the Nets was just like, all right, that's it. Enough of James Harden and his hamstring, enough of Kyrie and everything else. Just give me the ball and let me take over. And he was 1 inch away from putting away the Bucks 2 years ago. And like you said, that we haven't seen that guy since that Game 7 2 years ago because, well, he's been on a team that has been full of drama. Obviously, they fired their coach, got traded this year. And it seems like in spurts, Pounce, when Durant's just like, hey, give me the ball and get out of my way, there's no better bucket getter in the NBA. But it seems as though those come in like 2 to 3 minute spurts. He has yet to do it for a full game. When, like, is it going to happen? Is it going to happen this year? Because time's running out if he doesn't just start demanding the ball. But honestly, he doesn't seem like he is kind of at that phase with this team yet.
Yeah, I don't see him being at that phase with this team yet either, which, granted, it's hard to kind of be at that phase when you've only been with a team for a couple of months. Obviously, him and Monty Williams have some history together, but if he's going to get to that phase, it has to happen like right now. And when I say right now, I mean they can't let them in the game in Phoenix. They have to win and tie the series up at 2-2, or again, I would say they lose in 5. But yeah, no, I don't know if he's that guy anymore. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying that he can't do it. Let me be clear. I'm not saying that I don't think he can go out there and drop a 50 ball on any given night. But as you mentioned, I haven't seen him be that guy in a couple years, and he's going to have to turn into that guy overnight. And that's the thing that is the challenge for me. Over time, I think he can gradually show up and all of a sudden have a 50-point game. But he's now at a moment where he has to flip a switch, and I want to see if he can still flip that switch the way that we saw Steph Curry flip the switch in Game 7. That's probably the better example. The way we even saw Jimmy Butler flip the switch in those last 2 games in that series against the Bucks, where he had 100 points combined in those 2 games. I want to see if Kevin Durant is still at a point where he can just flip that switch overnight and will his team the victory ultimately, or at least will his team back into this series and tie it all up at 2-2, because they ain't coming back from down 3-1. I don't think they have the depth for it or the legs for it. He's going to have to tie this thing up and just make sure night in and night out I give my team a chance at victory, which they just quite haven't been able to do in the first 2 games of this series.
We had spent too much time talking about Justin Timberlake and Taylor Swift, but you know what? I felt like it was an important conversation, Devon. We didn't even get into the Jimmy Butler part of it. Real quick, we got about a minute left. There's 8 teams left in these playoffs. It is as wide open as the NBA has maybe ever been. I know we talked about the Nuggets. We're kind of sleeping on them. Of the 8 teams as we sit right now, Pounce, who do you have as your champion? And we'll write it down in pencil, not pen, because obviously everything can change.
Yeah. You know me, man. I got the Dubs to run it back. I think they'll beat whoever's remaining in the Eastern Conference. Obviously, they beat Boston last year. I think their biggest Achilles heel would have been a healthy Milwaukee Bucks team had they been able to go farther, but they obviously didn't. But you got this series. I think they'll beat LA, as I mentioned. I see a world where they beat Denver as well. And again, I just don't see a team that can stop what they do over a span of 7 games. I'm going with the Warriors, and Denver's a close second.
There we go, Devon Pouncey.
Coming up,
there we go. At @Pounce_Station on Twitter. You need to subscribe to the Wake Up and Win podcast if you don't already. And every time he comes on, I let everybody know he's out. He's DJing. It's way later than my bedtime. So if you are a night owl, check him on Instagram and find out all the spots that he's going to be out DJing, having a great time. Pounce, thanks so much, buddy. Always love talking hoops with you. We'll talk to you again soon.